Excellent. Apologize, City Council. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to develop and share the December update of the Island-wide West End, East, Downtown, and Midtown Drainage Vision 2025. We appreciate your proactive leadership in drainage. We would like to provide the December update for the drainage vision, as the mayor mentioned that we have done an October drainage presentation. Now, as we proclaimed in the October presentation, the city's vision is moving towards stormwater pump stations in key locations. We have just completed the 2020 grant applications within the last 2 months for 4 pump stations, and the cost is about $300 million, and the area is about 2,500 acres. And this covers probably a little over 50% of the east end of Galveston, and it is extremely unprecedented. We didn't wait for funding. We went after funding. And I would have to commend my team for what they have accomplished by applying. If you don't apply, you don't get the money. And Galveston needs it more than any city in the United States because we are an island. We are in 60% design for the 14th Street FEMA grant-funded pump station. Someone said going after grants is a pie in the sky. No, sir, it's not. We won the 14th Street FEMA grant-funded pump station. Of course, it has a local match of $3 million, but FEMA is providing close to $32 million. It's in 60% design. It's working, and on paper, of course, but we believe that based on the visits we've done to Palm Beach and New Orleans and Louisiana, it will function in Galveston. Next step is to do an island-wide master plan. Why an island-wide master plan? Because we cannot focus on holes in a pipe. We cannot focus on 1 foot of a pipe. We cannot focus on a pipe in one street. We're not going to be taking little bitty leaves and focusing them under a microscope and seeing how many veins they have. We are going to look at the whole forest, the landscape. We are expanding our focus to the landscape of the city of Galveston, downtown, midtown, east end, and our beautiful scenic landscape, west end. And we are going to come up with a master plan that will look at the entire city of Galveston at a high level. No more focusing on streets, no more focusing on a little box culvert that's clogged up with tree leaves. We are going to be focusing on drainage areas, because when you just install some straws in a little street and connect those straws to straws, which go nowhere, we call the drainage enhancements, marginal enhancements, not drainage improvements. So we are going to look at it citywide, and all the information that's out there in the field, the pipes below the ground, the size of the pipes, the depths of the pipes, the ditches, where do they go, how do they go through the culverts on FM 3005, interface with GLO, Army Corps, TxDOT, and we are going to come up with a master plan. At the next meeting, which will be the January meeting, we will bring recommendations on a consultant so they can put together the island-wide drainage master plan. Now, one thing I want to mention about the drainage master plan is that we have to go ahead and have the consultant hit the road. We don't want to have consultants that sit in the office with a pencil and an eraser drawing circles on a white sheet of paper. They will go to the field. I'm assuming they'll probably have 30 people from the east to the west, 2-man crews, 15 people, 15 crews going all over the island trying to see what is below the ground, what is the size of the pipes, what is the depth of the pipes, where are the ditches, how big are they, how wide are they, what kind of utility conflicts do we have. For example, the east end of the island has a man-made slope. We say it's flat, still it slopes from 17 to 4 feet towards the bay. But the west end is scenic and beautiful. Of course, we have architectural beauty at the east end. However, the west end has the natural scenic beauty. This jewel of Galveston we want to preserve. So we want to make sure that we come up with a comprehensive plan because when you widen a ditch and you make a culvert bigger, guess what? It goes from Daniel's house to Christodos's ranch. And we shifted the problem from Daniel's home to Christodos's ranch. Now, Christodos ranch is flooding because we looked at one pipe, one ditch. Therefore, we are going to be looking at drainage areas, the entire west end and the east end. We spent a lot of time on the east end. We said we'll come back downtown Galveston. We haven't forgotten you. We'll come back. Yes, we did. Before this council meeting, there's another $70 million grant waiting at building resilient infrastructure for communities. So getting back to the master plan, the drainage master plan, because it's a focus. Why do engineers keep using the word master plan? I'm not going to name some of the cities around Galveston, but if you try to go grocery shopping just to buy a can of milk, you have to plan for a 3-hour shopping because that city wasn't planned. They didn't have a master plan. They just grew in all directions. They put everything very close to a major highway. And so what? Everybody's traffic jammed. And if you try to widen the roads, you're going to end up in the mall. So we don't want to do like that. We want to master plan. We want to see what kind of developments we have on the east and those beautiful green patches. What kind of developments are going to come? How do we plan for that? And it's going to be master planned so that when my grandchild is hopefully the city engineer, he'll say my grandpa did a great job, and so did his team and the city manager. And the council was the most fantastic council we've ever had in the history of Galveston. So after a consultant is approved by council, we will start scoping the master plan so we have a comprehensive proposal and contract that exceeds your expectations. Since we are bringing in a detailed scope from a consultant next month, now we would like to open this to be an interactive session so we can invite your feedback on what the council would like to see in the scope for the 2021 master plan. We will take notes and make sure all your comments are included in the consultant's master plan scope. We are looking forward to your suggestions. We're going to be writing really fast, but if you do have questions, City Council, we respect your feedback. We can interact. I know this is really fast. I was supposed to get it done in 5 minutes. I think it took like 5.5, so excuse me for the 30 seconds extra. Council, it's your turn now.
Councilwoman Robb.
I saw your previous presentations, as well as this opening screen where it covers a lot of drainage projects to 65th Street. District 6 starts at 75th Street. On any given high tide or medium rain, it doesn't even have to be a heavy rain. I have a percentage of my population that either cannot get to their house, have to park their cars 2 blocks away to wade to their house. I have had constituents that were trapped in their house, 103rd, 104th Street, Sanger Gas Road, Sportsman Road, Pirates Beach, Terramar, Isla del Sol. I'm not seeing a lot of attention going into the drainage issues that exist in District 6. So, one, I'm surprised that we don't already have a master plan. And 2, I think it's great that we are going to have a master plan. But if we are hiring a consultant, I would like to be able to spend a couple days, as well as I'm sure other council members would, with them as they're touring the districts, because no one knows the issues that exist in our districts better than the council person, because we are the ones that get the daily calls, we are the ones that get the emails, we are the ones who go out, and before and after every storm, I go out and survey both the beach and bayside, and I can tell you, we have a lot of issues. We are also the tax base that is allowing the rest of the island to move forward. Residential-wise, we're at least 60%. If you include all the industrial and everything on the island, we're still 40%, which is kind of astounding. And we're also the most growing area. So I would like to know how we could pay more attention to District 6.
Excellent feedback, Councilmember Mary Robb, and I really appreciate your being proactive in asking for this presentation. So I want to address your comments one by one. First is, why don't we have a master plan? Galveston was established like 200 years back. So why don't we have a master plan? We do have a 2003 master plan, but it was done with the old technology consisting of pipes. And what we found is that when we got photographs of the outfall, we found a lot of barnacles that have filled up about half the outfall, and the remaining portion of the outfall is filled up with sediments because we have high tides. And so when we saw that, we felt that we shouldn't be investing our valuable citizens' taxpayer money on technologies that do not work for Galveston, because we began to understand that this is Galveston. This is not Houston, this is not Boston, this is not Austin, this is Galveston, and Galveston is unique. So because we value every dollar of taxpayer money, the engineering team and the management team came up with a design concept which consists of pump stations and backflow valves at the outfalls. And ma'am, I'm looking at a picture on my screen, and it shows the entire area from 57th to 74th. I think the area past 75th went off my screen, but I think we have the same problems. 57th to 74th looks like it's the ocean during high tide. I've seen pictures of people canoeing on 1559, and one of our assistant engineers, she came to me a few weeks back and said, "You've got to do something. I have to sell my car and buy a canoe. Daniel, do something." And so what I explained to Dilcia is I really do understand the west end of the island is really important. The area from 74th to where the west end starts is also very important. 57 to 74th is also very important. We did not wait for a master plan to be done. I actually created a few mini master plans and models for the 14th Street pump station, as well as the 2,500 acres that goes all the way to 61st Street. I've done mini master plans, and that was a test case because we want to feel the heartbeat of FEMA and the federal regulators. They came back and questioned us because they had $1 billion model, and they didn't accept the city engineer's model. The city engineer eloquently explained to FEMA that the model that the city of Galveston created in 1 week was more unique and much better than the $1 billion model that FEMA had. With all due respect, when they looked at the data, the conclusions, FEMA said, "Yes, we understand your model is superior. We will send it up to Congress now to go ahead and obligate the money," and it went up to FEMA. So now we know how we win these grants, and our city has been very proactive in going after these grants. Now, talking about the West End. The West End is unique because the East End has a man-made topo. The West End is natural. Most of the West End is about 4 to 5 feet elevation. Unfortunately, nature, I shouldn't say nature, but God sloped it towards the beach. And GLO came back and said, "No, you can't drain to the beach." We respect GLO. We have all the due respect for them. But tilting the West End on its axis to slope it back to the bay, I understand it's not an option. Yes, in the middle of the 1900s, they went ahead and raised the east end of Galveston by seawall and the bay. However, there are certain elements that we have to consider for the West End. we don't need a master plan to understand the problems at the West End. We understand the heartbeat of the citizens. We know exactly what's happening. I have slides and slides of solutions that are applicable to the West End. However, the challenge is if we don't look at West End as one entity, one drainage area, we might just go ahead and replace one culvert that's a bottleneck. For example, at Pirates Beach, I've looked at the culvert, and I talked to Angelo, who's been here for 40 years, and he said, Daniel, I think that culvert, when they installed it at FM 3005, they've got it lower than, actually got it higher than it's supposed to be. So there's challenges. Some culverts are lower, some culverts are inundated, and ditches are inundated. So how do we get the drainage to the bay? There are challenges. I visited Karankawa. I visited so many subdivisions. There's solutions for all of these. And I think one integral part of that solution, ma'am, would be to build pump stations. And we want to make sure that when we do the master plan, we look at the whole area and come up with magnitudes. Right now, we have a qualitative analysis of the entire city of Galveston. We know what needs to be done. But what is the magnitude of what needs to be done? We know we need pump stations, we know we need pipes, we need outfalls, we need big ditches, we need big culverts. So what is the size of these ditches and pump stations and outfalls? That needs a quantification. And for that quantification, we need to know what's in the ground, what's the existing conditions, and if the consultant thinks that they're going to sit in the office and run this model, I can run this model. That's not what I'm going to hire a consultant for, because I've run models that are working.
I don't mean to interrupt you, even though I am, so I apologize. But the culverts that run under 3005 are all currently being replaced by TxDOT, of which we're going to have an update from them as well. But there currently isn't a lot of coordination between the city and what's being done by TxDOT. So as they're raising the road and replacing the culverts to help the flow to the bay, we're now having more flooding in the neighborhoods because we're not coordinating our efforts between the two. So the project is moving forward. So many people have questions about the project as it moves forward, but we're not coordinating with them. So the culverts are being replaced right now. The neighborhoods are having more flooding on both sides, beach and bay side. And we need to be doing more coordination with that project, or by time you get around to doing the master plan that includes District 6, we're going to have so much damage to our roads and other infrastructure, it doesn't make sense.
Council member, I absolutely agree with your feedback. On behalf of the city, my apologies for not coordinating with TxDOT. This is outstanding feedback. What you have said is a very valid point. If TxDOT project is delayed, so this would be the best time to go ahead and meet with Jamal and Joel, the area engineers for TxDOT, and discuss with them our concerns, what the citizens' feedback is, what the council's feedback is. This is the reason, one of the main takeaways from this council meeting, getting feedback from the council, that everybody has a dead spot in the rear view mirror, and this is a dead spot in my rear view mirror. I take full responsibility for it. After this council meeting, I'm going to go ahead and meet with TxDOT, and I'm going to call Jamal and talk to Brandon and the city manager and see if we can have some meetings. We will take a relook at the complete drainage design so that when we come back with a master plan, it's not too late and the damage is already being done. I do appreciate the feedback.
I would like to attend that meeting, and I think we need to get that set up as soon as possible.
Yes, ma'am. That'll be on the top of my list. I'm going to get this up. There's going to be a phone between me and Jamal as soon as the council meeting is over. I really do appreciate the feedback. Your feedback is invaluable, and we will definitely move forward on that. And definitely, ma'am, we will invite you to that meeting.
And
It would be a pleasure to.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yes, sir.
Good. I think Councilwoman Robb brings up some great ideas here in this West End situation. It does kind of, it concerns me a great deal that we haven't coordinated with TxDOT on this, on their changes there, if that's in fact the case. If that is the case, as Daniel mentioned, that needs to be corrected immediately. Also, would it be possible that, Brian, that Daniel get with Councilwoman Robb right now and start before we get to this consultant coming on board, and let's start addressing these issues that she brought up.
There was some early coordination with them. That project has actually morphed a little bit. There's some discussion as to whether, and Jamal is supposed to be on the call. You know, we're putting a lot of water on TxDOT ditches. TxDOT's responsible for draining the highway, not for draining the subdivision. So we'll have some more discussion with them on it.
Well, that's going to be, and I'd like, if you wouldn't mind, and I think Councilwoman Robb, what she's asking, something needs to be done immediately here, and if Daniel could get with her and start looking at these issues right away on that.
Sure.
Councilman Collins.
Yeah, Daniel, thanks for the update. During the update, you said to downtown, we haven't forgotten you, we're coming back there. What specifically are you referring to for drainage in downtown?
Yes, sir. After we made the presentation, we found out a grant program called Bringing Resilient Infrastructure to Communities. And we looked at downtown, we looked at the hotspot. It appeared to be the area from Ship Channel to Seawall and from 19th to 25th Street. And so we came up with a conceptual design for a pump station sitting right on 20th Street. Nope, it's not going to impact KT Seafood. It's a little away from KT Seafood in that green patch. And we'll build some big boxes and pipes between 19th and 25th, all the way from Ship Channel to Seawall, to all flow towards that pump station. And then even during high tide, which is what we are seeing on Strand, sir, even on a warm, sunny day, when me and my kids go for a walk, we have to wear boots on Strand because it's tidal flooding. And the pump station with a backflow valve, we have some flap-gates that are very low resistance that will open up very quickly under a few inches of water in the box. But it will not allow the barnacles and the sediment to come back. It's a one-way valve. So that's the solution that we, conceptual proposal that we sent to the BRIC grant. And I think it was in the range of 60 to 70 million. I think it's very promising. We have a very good concept. We have a conceptual design. Now the regulators are going to come back and probably ask the same questions that FEMA asked us before they awarded us the pump station, and we are well prepared for it because this is the second time it's happening. You have any specific questions, sir, on how certain things are going to be done?
Well, yeah, a couple. First of all, downtown, we're acutely aware of the tidal flooding down there. This backflow design, is this a proven design? We've had go around with backflow preventers in the past, and to my knowledge, haven't come up with a good solution to that. And when you say a pump station, are you talking about the green space there between the Rig Museum and Harbor House? That's pretty prime, a pretty prime area for business development down there. I wonder if that's exactly where we ought to be placing the pump station.
That is actually awesome feedback. What happened is we had very little time to finish up the concept, and me and a few people went and did some site visits, talked to a few people at the city, and for some reason we have a tendency to get influenced by green patches thinking these are available for development. But we did find some alternate locations in the same area that if those green patches could become prime development, we were very flexible to where we can move the pump station to where It would not impact the existing history, architecture, or the plan for future development. So we do have options. There's a lot of space in that location, and it just has to be strategically placed.
Okay.
And on tidal backflow, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
You had a comment on the tidal backflow. The points that you mentioned, sir, those were the exact same points that we investigated. Has this been used at other locations? So when initially we came up with a duckbill valve, which is a little HDPE pipe projecting into the bay, we found out from Palm Beach and Miami and Louisiana that it gets clogged, and therefore we decided to go against it. And it also takes a lot of water to open those duckbill valves. They are a little hard, resistant. So we came up with this, it's a stainless steel flap gate, and it's got very little resistance, and it's being used in a few places. It's interesting to see that things that work are not very widely used, and things that don't work instead are being used, and people are learning the hard way. But we've taken the opposite approach. Like you said, we are not going to touch anything until we know it has been used. We did all our calculations, and we feel strongly that this will work. Also, the other thing we've done is downstream of this flap gate, to make sure it works, we have a big chamber so that if the barnacles come in for a visit, they can check in and they can check out, because the wall is going to be so slimy, so smooth, that the barnacles won't be able to grasp the wall and make a home and block the outfall if there's sediments. It'll be a weekend project for me. I'll go clean it up.
All right, and I would echo Councilwoman Rob's concerns about coordination with TxDOT, because of course, on this end of the island, we're living through the Broadway project, and we're far from being done with that. There have been some odd little drainage spots and culverts included that it's almost like they're reproducing the bridge block problem with some of these dips that occur at these little drainage spots at the corners. And I'm not sure they're functional or what their purpose is, and we've had some trouble getting some good feedback from TxDOT on exactly what those are for, why they're there, and how we're going to be integrating our drainage system and our streets with their work on Broadway. So I too would like I'd like to engage in any conversations you can have with them about coordination on finishing Broadway. Thanks for your presentation, Daniel.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And I would like to mention a few points on the bridge block that you mentioned, sir. So the other council members and the staff might be aware. During the initial phase of the project, the city had an extensive involvement during the design phase for the bridge blocks. In fact, the city funded the study for the bridge blocks. What we found is that many of these bridge blocks were installed hundreds of years back, and some of them are made of wood and they've collapsed. And also Broadway was acting as a dam, preventing the sheet flow from going from the south to the north. So what the TxDOT engineers had decided is that if we lower Broadway, this dam that is holding up the water on the south end and flooding it would go to the north end, because eventually we need to get it to an outfall. The bridge blocks, we made them as wide and as deep as possible with reinforced concrete, well designed, so it'll take the traffic load. I frankly asked a question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm not actually complaining about the bridge blocks. I'm saying where the bridge blocks have been removed and replaced, they've been replaced with holes. That I would love to get out on Broadway in the area of 16th, 18th, 20th Street and show you how some of these things are being replaced and the problems they're causing. They're in fact they're traffic hazards in some locations.
David, Joel's on the Joel Caldwell. Joel's on the call. He could explain. Some of that's going to be remedied when they actually lower the elevation of Broadway. But Joel, are you on the call?
Well, I don't.
Yeah, Joel.
Joel. I don't know that we need to get off on the specifics of this right now and take up all of council's time. But I would like to meet with Daniel and maybe Joel, anyone from TxDOT, that we could take a look at those and that can explain how that's going to be remediated when we get to to the end of this project.
You bet.
Sounds
Yes,
good.
sir. That's a very valid comment, and I'm sure Brian would entertain that. I'd be very pleased if I had the opportunity to walk with Councilmember David Collins and understand the concerns so that I can relay that to Jamal and Joel. One thing I would like to mention is, of all the cities that I worked in, Galveston has an exceptionally strong, cordial, professional relationship with TxDOT, and kudos to the city staff. I know that in other places, engineers burn their bridges, but in Galveston, we are one team, so we can definitely communicate with Jamal and Joel, and they've funded a lot of city projects. Thank you, Jamal and Joel.
Yeah, we'd be happy to go meet with you guys and take a look at any questions you
Very good. Thank you, Mayor.
And Joel, I don't know if you were on the call, Joel, or not, when we talked about there's some issues on the west end with the new crossings going into the center out there on 3005. It could be causing some backup into the neighborhoods. We'd also like to get with you on that pretty quickly. Daniel's going to reach out and set something up for you and the council member out there.
Sure, definitely.
Okay.
Daniel, also, I want to kind of nail this thing down with the consultant you're bringing in. This is going to come, your plans are to bring this to council at our January meeting, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Not the design fee, but the selection of the consultant with the scope.
All right. And how long is this study or this consultant going to take to come up with this master plan?
Yes, sir. It is going to take 2 years, and the first phase would be to get all the information on what's below the ground into the GIS. So everything that's existing has to be mapped, so we don't spend our time fixing what's not broke. And they will run an existing conditions model to see where the pitfalls, the problem areas are. And once they identify the problem areas based on the existing conditions, then the 8th month, they will start doing the hydrology and hydraulics modeling. And that will go on for 2 to 3 months, sir. And then at that point, they will identify options for each drainage area all over Galveston. And then those will be conceptually shown on maps so we can present it to the city council and the citizens with the cost and prioritize them for the next bond election, and also prioritize them for the grants and possible IDC funding.
Well, Daniel,
That's critical because, as you know, with some of our other projects, we discover things that aren't mapped. We have no record of these things even being. We also are finding that while we do have them in our GIS systems and in our maps, that these storm systems have been breached, meaning that while we have a perfectly decent sized storm drain, at some point somebody ran a water line or a sewer line through the center of the box, which causes a debris catch for us. So we're finding these things as we go. We've been finding them as we've been going along, and I don't want anybody to think that we're going to shut down for 2 years waiting for this study. Daniel's feeding in live information to them of projects that we have underway. We're still working under the existing drainage plan that we have. There was very little done on it until about 6 years ago. It was a very robust plan, and as Daniel pointed out, the good news is that the technology has changed. This plan was done in the early 2000s. There was nothing really done with it. We've picked it up. We've run with what we can do that won't be adversely impacted by the new technology that we're putting in. So we've implemented pieces of it that we can do, but it's time for Daniel to really get this updated. And part of that is that what we found is that in the 2000, whoever commissioned the early 2000s drainage plan, the locations and things aren't real accurate. But then again, too, in 2000, they didn't have as accurate of GPS and things as we have now. So this is really going to clean all that up and help us going forward with a lot of these big drainage projects that we've got going on.
Well, I'm glad to hear, Brian, that we're not going to just sit for 2 years, because this issue is getting worse and worse every day. And with these storms coming, it's going to be quite an impact on this community. So during that time, I understand it takes time. We need to map all this and know what's under the ground there, but we need to stay in touch, as I know you will, and I think you're hearing from council pretty loud and clear. If we have problems now, they want to stay in the loop on doing something and what we can do at this point to provide some type of relief and be prepared so when this master plan comes down the line, that we're ready to hit the ground running. So very important.
And the other thing too, that the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s drainage plan it didn't take into account any sea level rise.
Right.
And we're going to have that factored into this as well. Daniel's been working on that. And so a lot of what the 2000 plan or the early 2000s plan calls out for, it calls out for some solutions that actually get exacerbated, that exacerbate flooding at high tide. It calls out for bigger, larger drains, and we've done some of that. But we are finding, and we do confirm that when what goes in is going to come back the other way when the tide comes up. So that's why we're going to update this with some more modern solutions that actually try to solve that. But we are doing what we can with that plan in preparation for what we know is going to ultimately be at the outfalls. So a lot of the work we're doing now is in anticipation of what will eventually be these pump stations at the outfalls and these other things. Because obviously if the internal drainage systems that we have are in very poor condition, when you put a pump on the end of them, it's only going to cause further and further issues on these old systems. So that's why we're moving forward, and in the next 2 years you're going to continue to see those projects being done in anticipation of what the drainage plan is going to bring out.
Well, personally, and I think council, I don't want to speak for them because they haven't mentioned this, but I tell you personally, we need to have an update routinely on this, where we are on drainage on this, how we're responding currently on this. This is something that we just can't set aside. We need to talk about it constantly. So, and so that's my thoughts. And as we go along here, I know you'll have it on the agenda for January, but we're going to have updates on that, and I'll be putting on the agenda where we stand with these drainage problems and how we're addressing them.
Sure.
Okay.
Mayor, I believe Councilmember Quiroga raised his hand.
I'm sorry, Bill.
It's quite okay. I have a couple of questions. I think the plan is good. We need to do something out in the West End, which is good. We're talking about the consultant. What is the consultant? What are they going to do? I'm a big proponent of having a feasibility study. Brian mentioned the pipes that are out there that maybe not on plaques or whatever, but a feasibility study really needs to be done before maybe the consultant comes in with his master plan, or is that part of the plan? The consultant does the feasibility study.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Quiroga, that is an outstanding question. You actually nailed it. So let me explain the sequence in the master plan. The first thing they would be doing in the master plan is collecting information on what's below the ground, what's out there in the field, and the pipes, the ditches, and the topo. And after they do that, they will have an in-house discussion on what is the feasibility, meaning, and when we say feasibility, it's going to be three factors: effectiveness, implementability, and cost. Now, if they go straight to the master plan and come up with a design that is needed that costs us about $7 billion, then we are going to be worrying, where do we start? So the master plan scope is going to be extremely well written and scoped out. That's the reason I really don't think we should rush it to the January council. There needs to be a lot of interaction. So it is very clear that the feasibility study is incorporated into the modeling, because there's a term that modelers use, junk in, junk out. We took care of that by saying they're doing the field visit. They're mapping everything in GIS. Now next, when they run the model, they actually have to input technologies into the model. So prior to running the model, they would have to do a feasibility study of what technology is effective, implementable, and cost effective. and input only these technologies into the model. And I think that's where some council interaction, citizens interaction needs to happen, so that we don't come up with a master plan that presents unreasonable, expensive technologies that are so expensive that they cost more than the value of the city limits of Galveston.
Bill, any other questions, sir?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just don't want to start a program where we're putting a Band-Aid on top of facilities that need to be replaced, because there's another issue. We're going to have pump stations. I hear we're talking a lot about pump stations. Where are they going to be placed? If the pump stations are needed, how are they going to be activated to pump the water out? Because what we're going to have is people probably going to complain that the pump station is causing excess noise. So that's one issue you need to look at. Do we have quiet running pumps? What's going to be our source? When are they going to be activated? Are they automatically activated? These questions need to be asked. And again, like Member Collins said, is where are the locations? Are we going to put them in prime spots, not prime spots? What is actually the flow of the water right now as it comes from the south end to the north end, and how it's going to be pumped out? So those are a lot of questions we need to look at. Plus, not only, I think we also need to look when we get these grants is it needs to come back to the council so that we can make sure that monies are appropriated correctly. And I just don't want, I'd like to have that done in phases where we check it off and we check the numbers to make sure that everything is kosher. So that's another issue that we need to look at.
Councilmember Carroga, your feedback is well taken, it's outstanding. In light of your feedback, this is what I would propose. And I was actually thinking not as comprehensively as you did, which is outstanding, but to a certain extent that we need to do it in phases. What I would propose is, because if we give a consultant the whole project, they sometimes tend to jump to phase 3 without doing phase 1 and 2, and then we've always had to drag them back to phase 1. What I would propose is that they give us a proposal for all the phases, but when I do the staff report, I request that we only activate phase 1, which is going to the field, getting the field information and mapping it and putting it in GIS. Once they do that, then we can activate phase 2, which will be a feasibility study. And everything you said, sir, should be in the feasibility study. Where do they put the pumps? Are they pumping it in the right direction? Where they are pumping it, does it have the capacity to receive that additional flow? So they do a feasibility study island-wide of the technologies with concepts on how they plan to do it, and then submit a feasibility study report, which is phase 2. Once we have approved the feasibility study report, having already approved the field data collection, then we can say, okay, we understand these are the technologies that we feel will work. We understand your professional opinion, and also have a meeting with the council and the public, and then tell them, okay, now we are going to go back to the council for phase 3, which will be to start the modeling and complete the master plan with these technologies that we have selected during the feasibility study, which is phase 2. And I think that will be a better approach than giving them the whole universe and they struggling and tripping on different ropes.
That's good. One other thing I'd like to ask is, in this plan, are we going to have a maintenance program that they will suggest that the city would need to maintain to make sure that we don't have any debris in any of the drainage lines?
Yes, sir. That is also an outstanding question, outstanding comment. The master plan, when they provide the master plan with unique solutions for each drainage area, it will be rejected by the city engineering department if they provide capital costs. They will have to provide life cycle costs. They will have to provide the costs for operation and maintenance. What is it going to cost? How many people do we have to hire? What equipment do we need? It'll almost be like an operations and maintenance manual. That's the reason, Councilman McCrory, I'm really pleased with the comments you provided. Now, after the dialogue and the interaction, this master plan is going to have 4 phases. One is field data, second is feasibility study, third is modeling, fourth is the final report with the capital cost, the life cycle cost, and the operation and maintenance manual that tells the city that we also have to fund operations and maintenance, and this is what they've recommended. And that way, it is a completely well thought out project with the 4 phases. I really appreciate you bringing that up. Thanks so much.
And the other thing too, Councilmember Karoga, is that we're also going to include in any designs we're putting in access to the storm systems. So many of our storm systems here don't have appropriate access to them, so it makes it very difficult for us to do maintenance on the systems. And because of the high tide levels, we can't get cameras down there as we would like. So, for instance, there's a 60-inch storm system down 23rd Street north of Market that is, the water's so deep we can't get a camera in it. And that's on a low tide day. So we've got to have better ways of accessing these things. So as we put these systems in, you'll see more and more and more access points into these storm systems so we can actually maintain them. These old systems have no way for us to maintain them other than usually at the inlet and probably at the outfall, and there's very few in between. So we're going to be working on that as well as part of these projects. Daniel's got that included on all the projects we've done so far.
Can I ask a question? If we
Yes,
have,
sir.
if we have that 60-inch line that's going out, I guess go towards the channel, you say?
Yes, sir.
Isn't there a method that we could block that, pump the water out, and then look at it at that point?
We've done that in the past with some of the other lines. It's hard to plug a 60-inch line like that because it takes so much time that you have to be able to have it open up to flow if we get a rainstorm. We've done it in several areas. You've probably read stories where they've done it in the past and it filled up with water so fast they couldn't get the bags out. And we've had to go back in years later to remove the bags. So we've done some of that, but you got to figure to pump that line out. There's different technologies we can use now. And we did some of that when we did the Market Street project. That's how we did the tie-in at 23rd and Market, when we were able to get down in that drain and do some cleaning on it. But it took a major excavation to do that, even to plug it up. Because remember, if we don't have access to it, it's almost impossible to plug it. So, especially when the outfall is so deep and submerged on the port side. But that's a good point.
All right, thank you. This is a subject we could probably talk about forever. William, you have your hand up?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Just real quick, how are we planning on communicating with the constituents on this plan? You know, I've got tons of pictures as far as, you know, District 2 goes, and so does some of the other residents. They've all, you know, drainage is a big issue in the city of Galveston. Is there a formal process we were planning on reaching out to the constituents and gathering data from them and their input, and then relaying it back to staff or consultant?
Yeah, there'll be a public input component to that.
Okay.
Councilmember Schuster. And the other thing I want to make perfectly clear to everybody that's on this meeting right now, no matter if we did everything that this company is going to propose, it is not going to eliminate flooding on Galveston Island. It will hasten drainage. It will stop some nuisance flooding. But given our terrain, given sea rise, it's going to improve dramatically. It'll go back to the way it probably was 30 or 40 years ago before we had a lot of this, and it's going to probably even be better in some areas. But I don't want anybody to think, and this is a very expensive proposition, I don't want anybody to think that if they could magically fund $1 billion worth of flood, and that's probably what you're going to be looking at in the billions to do all this, that it's going to magically solve and Galveston will never flood. That's just not going to be the case. There's no city in America that happens. But we can make it much, much, much better, and that's what we're going to try to do. But, we do these projects and people say, well, the street still floods. Well, yeah, if we get a 4-inch in an hour rainfall total, and part of that is changing and Daniel will tell you this, one of the things we've done is our drainage system was designed for a 2-year rain event. and we're trying to do it for a 25-year rain event now. You know, so we'll keep changing the dynamics to try to improve it, but it's never 100% going to eliminate 100% of the flooding, but it will definitely improve the drainage, and that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, and just one more question, it's okay. Let's say once this all gets approved 4 years down the road, where's the priority? Is it west end of the island? Do we start there first? Do we start downtown? Do we start residential core? Because everybody in here, obviously drainage was a big thing on the campaign trail, and it's a priority. And obviously our residents want it, so I was just wondering where we would start.
It'll be a mix, and a lot of it's going to depend on the funding. A lot of the federal funding is tied to the demographic, and it's tied to the economic impact, commerce. It depends on the grant. Again, you're talking about solutions that are going to quickly approach billions of dollars. I mean, each one of these little pump stations is $35 or $40 million all by itself. So there's going to be some different things. The ones that the city funds itself will probably be more focused on the west end, because that is never probably going to trigger any of these grants, at least the way they've come up so far. The ones in town will probably be triggered and prioritized based on the demographics and things that are doing that. One of the things, William, that we're doing, though, and Daniel brought this up, is we are looking at things on a basin basis. We are looking at drainage basins rather than in the past, the way the city looked at it. And if you look at the early 2000s drainage study, it's based on corridors. We're looking at it on a basin basis now. So that way we can still qualify for these grants, and we can attack a much larger area to improve drainage rather than just the 37th Street corridor or the 25th Street corridor. And that's the way they did the drainage plan in the early 2000s. It was very driven on a street basis, and we are doing it on a more basin type thing. And our modeling is set up that way. So and Daniel, and he would be so happy to show you this, I'm sure, we actually already have modeling in-house that we can show with a 4-foot tide what a 2-inch rain, if this rain rate does, and what it looks like, and what the inundation model looks like. We already have that capability, which is something we didn't have just even a few years ago. So, and that was the first key to determining, and we'll use those models to show us where we're having the highest and worst impacts, and where we can have the best impact from a drainage system. So there's going to be some that's, that people would call nuisance flooding, where a street floods for 30 minutes in a heavy rain and it drains. And then there's going to be some where the street holds water for hours and hours and hours. Those will be factored into the priorities on that.
Thanks, Brian.
Very good. Well, thank you everyone for your thoughts, and appreciate it, Daniel. Thank you for being here, and we'll be talking about this a lot more coming up in the future.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Council. This will be the beginning, not the end, so there'll be more interaction.
Very good. Thank you so much. Nellie, item 6B, please.
Item 6B, update from TxDOT on FM 3005 project.
And Councilwoman Robb, I know you placed this on the agenda. Would you like to introduce this, please?
Well, as we discussed earlier, there's the project where 3005 is being raised, as well as the replacing the culverts that run under 3005, because over the years, a number of them had just crushed or I'm lost for a word. Age had not served them well, so they were actually, a lot of them were blocked and they were not flowing. The project seems to have been extended. I have a lot of engineers or constituents that are engineers who have many questions about how they're layering the asphalt, how the project is being done, and so forth. So therefore, that's why I've requested an update. People were really stressed when it came out in the paper that the project's going to run now until 2022. And then again, addressing the issues where it is actually causing more problems at this point than fixing them.
Okay, and who do we have online, Brian, for?
Joel Clark is online, and Joel, can you start addressing some of these things, please?
Yeah, sure. So the duration, original reason for the duration mostly was to construct the crossculverts. Those were originally intended to be traffic one at a time. So they could lay those crossculverts, we're going to push traffic over, but this contractor found a more efficient way to do that. So they installed all of the drainage all the way up to 11 Mile Road already, up to Jamaica Beach. So they're actually going a lot faster. What's taking time?
Could you speak just a little louder, please?
Yeah, sure. Is that better?
A little bit.
It's taken time to lay the asphalt. We've come into the cold season, so we've paused the asphalt construction, but that should resume here probably in March. So all that's left is the rest of the drainage to the west end of the island, raising the rest of the roadway to the 7.5 foot elevation, and then completing the final surface asphalt.
And there were some questions that Councilwoman Robb had. Did he answer, where do we stand with your understanding of the answers on that, Marie?
Well, again, and I think that the coordinating with the city on the drainage issues, because there's two issues that have come into play with the layering of the asphalt. Is one, the entrance or crossing the road. There's been a number of issues that it bottoms out cars, but two, it's actually causing more water, floodwater retainage in the neighborhoods. And again, I think, I know I've been asking for this for the last 3 years. Why aren't we coordinating the drainage team with the TxDOT project? It seems it would just make a lot more sense. One of the things that I've heard, and maybe you could clarify this, that the asphalt layering that is going on is just a temporary deal?
Yeah, right. So to raise the road, we're using the same pavement material that's out there now, which is asphalt pavement. And you can only do that a little bit at a time to make the asphalt compact correctly to meet the density to handle traffic loads. So that's what those layers have to be laid in 4 inches, and you've got a transition down to existing pavement. So that's all. That's just temporary.
Well, I've got a presentation that if I can share, Brian, if you have a minute, I can share the presentation that gives you the timeline and what you're doing.
Could you identify yourself, please? Is this Dudley?
This is Jamal from TxDOT.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have some issues with the computer.
Jamal, could you speak up? We're barely hearing you.
Well, sorry, I was having some issues with my computer, so couldn't get connected. But anyways, I have a little presentation that we prepared, and that has all our contact numbers and everything that you guys can reach out to us. And I've been hearing once a lady was trying to get some information. I have a PIO number there too that she can reach out to us, and that's the best and the fastest way to get to us. I wanted to first start off with congratulating Mayor on your new position, on winning the election, and we've been working very closely with the City of Galveston and even on this project 3005. We worked initially with Ross Blacketer, who used to work for City, and I think then he left, and we were working with Kyle Hopper-Smith. We gave all the elevations. The biggest issue of the drainage that we have is basically we don't have an outfall on this. And I know Kyle had promised us that he would be working and trying to get those easements for TxDOT to drain these. But if you look at the maps, they all drain onto private property. There are 4 of those outfalls that fall into State Park and Wildlife Park. And we've been not even getting help from the state parks, and so we are trying to get those. In order to get the permits, it's a long duration to get the permits from Army Corps. We didn't want it to stop because I asked for this funding. This is a $40 million project, and our administration gave this funding to us, and I didn't want it to put a hold because I know that outfall would have been an issue, but we didn't want it to lose the funding, so I went with projects. So we are improving the drainage along 3005, changing all the cross culverts. I think there are 38 culverts in all that we are changing. From San Luis Pass to the seawall, and we are also changing all the driveway culverts, cutting the ditches. But the main problem is you won't get anything dramatic unless we have a good outfalls, and we are willing to work with city if they can help us getting these outfalls from private entities. This was from the very beginning. This was discussed with the Kyle Hawker-Smith that he was going to assist us with these outfalls, and I think we hit a roadblock on that. But Joel is working and he's committed some of our consultants to get the permit. Joel, what's the update on that permit? Can you have a permit? Can you have an update that you want to share with them?
Are they sending a receipt or something?
Yeah, sure. We've been working with our environmental coordinator from our district location. She's been coordinating with all the private property owners, such as Artist Boat and, like Jamal mentioned, Texas Parks and Wildlife, just to get the right of entries to determine the property boundaries. Right now, we have a drainage design which she's using, and maybe that's why some residents are mentioning that they're seeing flooding, because we have lowered some of the outfalls in a few locations, but only by maybe a foot or so. But the reason they're seeing that is because we cannot construct these outfalls because there's so much environmental restriction. And like Jamal mentioned, we have to go through the Corps of Engineers so they can allow us to continue and complete these outfalls out to the bay. And also, like you mentioned, yes, they're crossing some private property owners. And Texas Parks and Wildlife, we have a great relationship with Andy Sycox, who's their environmental coordinator. And we're willing to exchange and do some mitigation credit with the Texas Parks and Wildlife. And before, Kyle Hawker-Smith had offered his assistance to help us acquire some of these properties, but we both knew this was going to be a long and arduous process. So Susanna Scott, my environmental coordinator, did promise me she's going to get it, but we were looking at least a year to 18 months to just acquire the permit. We still haven't even completed the package yet. So we're still in the phase of identifying all the property owners and the impact of those properties and laying out the boundaries for the outfalls. And as soon as we get those details, sure, we definitely work with Brian and Daniel frequently. But Kyle started this project with us, and I guess that's kind of where the drop in communication happened.
Right, and Rob Weineke has joined us now, just in the middle of 3 storms, he joined us. So he'll be picking up along with Daniel on that project with you. I know Kyle had coordinated with you guys in the past. Daniel was not involved in that, so, but we will be now. So, but I agree, Joel, there's issues there with the property owners in the wetlands, and people don't like water in their wetlands. So we're still working on that, and we appreciate your help on that. But that's a big problem. We're getting the water to your ditch. We can't get it out of the ditch now, so that's going to be the next issue.
Yeah, and we're trying to be as gracious as possible to respect those people's property and their wetlands and estuaries and habitats and everything, while still trying to drain the west end of Galveston. It's been an interesting process.
Yeah, your drainage ditch has now become the entire conduit to drain the west end, and we appreciate your efforts on that, because I know that's a little bit beyond your normal scope, but we appreciate your help.
Jamal?
No, I'm glad to help. No problem.
Jamal, first of all, thank you for being here. What can the city do? What can we do to move this forward? Is there something else that we can do from a staff standpoint, from a relationship with the Army Corps of Engineers? What can we do to move this forward a little quicker?
I need to ask Dr.
Well,
Brown.
the biggest thing would be if we can get some kind of an easement to, we have a contractor that is going to work with us and help us clear these ditches, but we need some kind of an access to those properties. We don't have any access, and we've been trying to identify these property owners and trying to work with them. I know the city has a little bit more closer relationship with these private property owners, and they may work a little bit better than you guys than with us. So any help in that matter would be really appreciated.
Good news.
And I would be glad to assist with any of that. I know the city has designated easements, and again, that's where I think we all need to be working together. Because it is a big project, and we know we have major issues now from it. So any way that we can help you, or I can help you coordinate that with the property owners, and you know, it's good that Rob is involved with this. I met with him the other day. He's very impressive. I just think we need to get this coordination going now.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and a bigger issue is that a lot of these easements, they're really not easements that are out there. They, over the years, we had just accessed, they're presumptive easements is the best way to put it. And so we need to legalize those easements so we actually have right of entry to get to them. Some of them we actually have some rights to, but we can't access the thing to clean them out. And I know Kyle put some equipment out there and we got to run off one of these properties. So we're going to continue to work with these guys, and Rob is engaged on it now as well.
Very good.
I wanted to, I know the council lady talked about that. This is not the riding surface. I know that it's rough right now driving because we are raising the roadway, and we normally raise it with the base material. So now, once we get done with the elevation, and I think we are 80% complete on the elevation of the roadway, we are at this 5 feet elevation level, and we will be coming back with the surface layer. So we are almost 50% at this time. We have to have signals upgraded, striping, surface layer. So the riding surface is not going to be like this. It's going to be as smooth as the other roadways. It's the temporary phase we have to live through this construction. So bear with us. We're working, really trying to get this thing completed.
And again, I think people can live with the rough roads, but we can't live with the areas that are already having flooding, and now they're 5 times worse. So I think if we could all just coordinate efforts, and again, this is something I asked for over the last 3 years. So I'm glad that we can finally achieve that. Thank you.
Brian, I wanted to share, I've got our PIO, Danny Perez, online. I can share his number with everybody, and he's the best person to contact if you can't get hold of us. I know, Brian, you have my numbers. You can contact me all the time, but you can also have this additional resource. He's a great person. He works great with your PIO as well. His name is Danny Perez, and his number is 713-802-5077. He's our public information officer, so you can reach him anytime, and he knows how to get hold of us.
And his name is Daniel Perez.
It's Danny Perez. I'm on the call. It's Danny Perez.
Hi, Danny.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you need, feel free to call us to reach out to us. I also work alongside with our district engineer, Eliza Paul, and our deputy district engineer, Varuna Singh.
Real quick question, and we're going to move on from this subject unless council has some other thoughts. But if everything moves as we hope that it will, when will this project be completed?
I think the deadline to finish this project is 2022. I think so. Let me check that. I was trying to confirm that. April of 2022.
Yeah, it was April 2000.
the reason why it shows that today it's going to be finished earlier, we have actually, Brian reached out to me about adding some turn lanes. There are some issues with the, especially with the emergency vehicles when they're at the west end. I think there's some of the places the road is narrow and it doesn't have another lane where emergency vehicles can access. So we added some turn lanes. So that's going to be added, which also adds some time to the project. And we were lucky to get that funding from the Transportation Commission. We are adding turn lanes on this project as well, which was not part of the original project, but since Brian reached out to me and I was able to get some funding to get that done. So that adds the time to it.
So did I hear approximately April 22?
Yes, sir. April 22 is the approximate time for the permitting.
All right, very good. Council, any other thoughts? Marie, any other questions on this?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you very much. I think if we could get our efforts coordinated, we could solve a lot of problems. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everyone from TxDOT for being here. We'll be back in touch, I know, very shortly.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good.